Hello and welcome to an episode of Historically Marked. I am Jason in Quincy, Illinois at Quincy National Cemetery. This is one of the smaller cemeteries that I've visited and maybe one of the smallest national cemeteries in the United States. But I'll show you around and I'll give you some history about the cemetery. There are no quote-unquote notable graves here, but I'm definitely on a mission to visit as many national cemeteries as I can, and I'll show you what I can find. Here we go. And so the first marker on the right is basically when it was added to the National Register of Historic Places, and that was in 2011. And then there are two markers here. One right there is the National Cemetery System. I covered that in a previous episode. But this one is going to talk about the Quincy National Cemetery. Starting off with Civil War Quincy. Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter in South Carolina on April 12, 1861. 3 days later, President Abraham Lincoln called for volunteers to suppress the rebellion. Men in Quincy, Illinois rushed to volunteer for federal service. Located on the Mississippi River and served by railroads, the city was an excellent staging area for soldiers headed south. The U.S. Army constructed a permanent barracks in Franklin Square, the heart of the city. As the Civil War began in earnest, wounded troops required medical care. Quincy's first hospital opened in July 1861 in a former chair factory. A second opened in a 3-story brick factory. Finally, the U.S. Army occupied and converted the Quincy College campus into hospital space. Many sick and wounded soldiers died in these facilities. Under Soldier's Lot, in 1861, the U.S. Army began burying its dead in a lot within Woodland Cemetery. This cemetery had been established in 1847 by Quincy founder and former Illinois Governor John Wood. By the end of the war, the 12,000 square foot lot contained 242 graves, including 6 unknowns. In 1870, the lot was officially donated to the federal government. Stone curbing enclosed 3 sides. 4 gun monuments marked the south entrance. The local chapter of the Grand Army of the Republic, a Union veterans organization, in 1882 successfully lobbied to have the property designated a national cemetery. When the first superintendent appointed here was charged with fraud, the Secretary of War canceled the position. Thereafter, the government paid the Woodland Cemetery Association to care for the grave sites. And this here is the Soldier's Lot plan at Woodland in 1892. And then over here, under National Cemetery, Woodland Cemetery's location on a ridge above the Mississippi River led to erosion problems. Faced with a choice between building a retaining wall or moving the dead, the U.S. Army concluded it was best to relocate the graves. In fall 1899, the federal government purchased a lot in Graceland Cemetery, east of downtown, from the Quincy Cemetery Association. The remains of 287 soldiers were reinterred in the new 0.45 acre Soldier's Lot, no longer classified as a national cemetery. The federal government contracted with the association to maintain its property. By 1924, a part-time caretaker was appointed to oversee the Soldier's Lot. In 1936, it was redesignated Quincy National Cemetery. Over the years, modern development, including the extension of Main Street through the private cemetery in the 1970s, has separated the 2 burial grounds. And these are just the rules. In honor of those who gave the ultimate sacrifice in service to the United States of America and the families they left behind. The sacrifice will not be forgotten. Those are found at many other national cemeteries. In remembrance of those who served in the United States Amphibious Forces on board landing ship tanks, or LSTs. Dedicated by the Illinois LST Association, Incorporated, on May 21st, 2011. And as we enter the cemetery, here is the Gettysburg Address. Another thing that's found at a lot of national cemeteries. There are no notable burials here, but I thought it was worth definitely checking out. This cemetery, by the way, is not open to any new interments, unfortunately. But according to findagrave.com, there are 663 interments here. And one thing the marker left out was in 1949, a survey of the cemetery was conducted and revealed that mistakes occurred in the erection of the perimeter fence, which, you know, was circling around the cemetery. But a portion of the government's land was not fenced, while a portion of the Quincy Graceland Cemetery inadvertently was fenced. In 1953, it took an act of Congress, Public Law 116, to correct the boundaries to suitable satisfaction of both property owners. So I thought I'd come check out the center of the cemetery. VA proudly commemorates our Vietnam veterans. And then I'll show you this plaque right here. It's a poem by Theodore O'Hara. If you want to hit pause and read it, go right ahead. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Historically Marked National Cemeteries Edition. I am at Quincy National Cemetery in Quincy, Illinois. Please be sure to remember our heroes who have fallen and who have served our wars and served our country.